probably because of how I grew up or where I grew up. Like Asian, I'm Panamanian, Latin, I'm not Latin. And I think those were some of the biggest things that I had to contend with when I went to college. College was that time when I had to really explore identity and figure out, where do I really fit in? Am I really Latin? Am I really Asian? Am I Chinese?
Welcome to the My SGV podcast. Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you're from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope to bring you another great episode with someone right here in the San Gabriel Valley. So if you are a regular listener, thanks for tuning back into the show. And if you're new here, thanks for checking us out. We hope you enjoy this content, and please consider subscribing to see more of this. You know, one of the unique things about the San Gabriel Valley is definitely our diversity, right? And that diversity comes from all walks of life, but internationally as well. And I don't know that there's another community that I know of that has so many international students as just a norm at every level, right? Like elementary, high school level, college level, than here.
Yes, you're right. I can't think of one either. And I was listening to our intro, and our intro is almost like an advertisement for diversity and international students. And it led me to think the very same thing. You know, this San Gabriel Valley is almost built to be a receptor of international students, international, families, people coming from overseas.
Sure. I didn't have the experience of, I'm not an international student, but I remember certainly in college being around international students, and then later on actually refereeing is where I went to Southwestern Academy, and I would referee, and I was like, what is this school? And everybody there is an international student. I thought, wow, this is right in my backyard. But there must be so many, or it feels like the San Gabriel Valley has a lot of resources for international students to make it to make that transition easy for them.
Yeah, it's just really built around an international environment, unlike you'd see almost anywhere. My own experience with international students as an immigration lawyer is, traveling around the country, giving seminars to foreign students at all of our major universities. And it struck me that a lot of the best work that is being done by international students in terms of research at major research universities.
Absolutely true. I went to Caltech last night.
Yeah.
On the recommendation of our guest yesterday,
right.
James DiPietro of Crown City Podcast. So I took my wife, my two daughters there. We went to the Turtle Pond. But I'm bringing that up because as you walk around and I'm looking around at the students who are there, all I saw were Asian and Indian really yesterday.
And you know that Caltech is primarily a graduate or postgraduate school as opposed to I don't know what you would call it, but pre-graduate school. So you see a lot of what we just talked about, the international students and researchers.
Sure. Yeah, it's really a great place. I really like our tagline. It encompasses, I think really what the SGV is about. And if you want to find out more about what the SGV is about, don't forget to check out San Gabriel Valley Now, your source for city news, announcements, events, special savings, and everything SGV. Check them out on Instagram, sgv.now, and read their magazine, SGV Now, on their website. Our guest today has a lot of experience, I would say, in the area of international students. She was one herself. Her name is Olivia Liu, and she's a champion for international students. Olivia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Yeah.
What is a champion for international students?
What is a champion for international students? I think really being someone that's constantly advocating for our international students. It's really being a ambassador really to the United States in many ways, to share with our international students and their families how great a U.S. education would be, and welcoming students to come here to study in the U.S. and also San Gabriel Valley, and seeing the benefits of what is here, and helping students achieve their educational goals. really just trying to be that.
And where does the information start? Like once they are here or in their home country, like where do you start to get that word out to them?
So typically, so I've been in the field of international education for over 15 years. A lot of the work that most of us usually do in international education is really pre-arrival for many students. Some of us, for example, for me, I work at Pasadena City College, and a lot of the work that we do is really talking to families and students even before they arrive. Sometimes can be abroad. A lot of the communication now with internet, it's so easy. Students have access to us through video conference, through Zoom, through webinars. And so we educate students a lot even before they arrive. And that process really can take, for some students, can take almost up to a year, right? Because they learn about what opportunities there are, they choose a school, and once they start choosing a school, they apply, and they go through the visa application process, which you probably may be familiar in so many ways, and really guiding families into that arrival process. And once they arrive, it's really helping students get through their education while they're here.
I see. Okay. Well, before we dive into your experience in this field, what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
So I was an international student many years ago. I grew up in Panama, so I'm Chinese. My parents are from Hong Kong and Macau, and they immigrated to Panama. And I grew up in Panama, and so when it was time for me to go to college, I was very fortunate. My parents gave me the opportunity to go study abroad. And so they said, hey, go to the US. And at the time we had family here in Monterey Park, like a distant auntie, best friends with my mom. And then she's like, yeah, I just come here to California to study. And I was like, not sure what school I wanted to go. So it was eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And then I applied to colleges. I got rejected to most of them, with the exception of USC. And my backup was Pasadena City College. And so I ended up here in San Gabriel Valley because by way of my aunt, who recommended, hey, you should come and stay with me and study here in California. And that's how I ended up here. And over the years, I went to college near here, I lived here, and eventually I got married, had kids, and I ended up, establishing roots here and never left.
So you not only work now at PCC, but you attended PCC at one point. I
didn't. My sister and my brother did.
I see.
Yeah, I went to USC, and my backup plan was PCC. But I guess in many ways that tie with my family being enrolled at PCC eventually kind of came true because I ended up working for the college.
I see.
Yeah.
While you were attending USC, did you know this was the field that you wanted to enter?
No, I thought I would work for the UN. Because I was all in international relations. That was my major. And I thought I wanted to work for the United Nations. And then I remember when I graduated at that moment in time, I was like, do I move to New York? Because that's where the headquarters is. I was like, oh, but I hate the cold. I love the heat. I grew up in the heat. I was like, I don't think I can move to New York to work for the United Nations. And so I kind of, after college, I ended up teaching English in Japan. For 2 years, and thinking that, I'll take a break and see where it goes. And that's how I ended up in international education and really enjoy the exchange, the ability to really promote U.S. education, talk to students. And I think when I ended up finishing my post in Japan, I came back to the U.S. to get my higher education degree, my master's in higher education. That's how I ended up. That's how it started, and that's how I am still here in international education.
That's right. You did the JET program with Christine.
I did. Yeah, I did the Japan exchange and teaching program. We actually we were not in the same. We were in the program, but not at the same time. So we kind of connected here in San Gabriel Valley after I came back, because I came back and I was looking for people who had the same experience, because it's such a life-changing experience to teach abroad in Japan, that I was looking for alumni who had done the same thing. And that's how I connected with Christine, and we've been friends ever since.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that she grew up in Panama, and she, that would be the dream person to steal, Scott, because she speaks Chinese
Spanish.
and Spanish.
Yeah.
Well, you speak Cantonese, Mandarin, Spanish,
Japanese.
What else?
Yeah, a little bit Japanese, but my Mandarin is not very good. I can understand. My Cantonese is very good. My Spanish is fluent. So a lot of people, I fool a lot of people. I would never imagine someone like me.
How come your English is fluent? Did you speak it a lot in Panama?
Yeah, we did. I went to bilingual school. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate that we had English was the main language that was used for most subjects at my school, with the exception of like math or Spanish. Spanish was taught in Spanish. And then I think it was a good transition when I came here to study in the U.S. because it was, it was fairly easy.
How did your first experience of the San Gabriel Valley compare to Panama?
There was so much food variety. There was so much diversity in food. Because in Panama, I mean, I grew up eating Chinese food, and there's, local Panamanian food is kind of like Cuban food in many ways, right? It's a lot of fried food, a lot of stews, and there's a lot of diaspora even within Panamanian food. And so I came to the U.S., the first time I got exposed to Mexican food, Vietnamese food, Korean food. So when I came here to San Gabriel Valley, I was like, oh my gosh, I never knew there was like a variety of things, of cuisines that I've never been, exposed to. So that was, I think that was the most surprising thing to me.
Did you experience any, I don't want to say racism, but maybe discrimination growing up in Panama and being of Asian ethnicity?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think in many ways, like the Asian immigrant experience here in the United States is very similar when you talk about Asians being in other parts of the world. Like my parents had a business. We were very fortunate. My dad worked very hard when he was young to create a business of his own. And when in the town that we lived in, there were a lot of Chinese people who lived there. But it was blatant racism. Like people would call me names. Even at school, I was bullied for. Yeah, and I went to an international school and, being bullied for being Asian, being called names. And so it doesn't go away. It really, you're always being the other. You're always being blamed for something.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how was that when you arrived here and seeing, the San Gabriel Valley being as it is?
I was quite surprised. There were so many Asian people here in this area. I think like being in a place where you don't think or you don't see yourself as an other. Like everyone looks the same. You can blend in very easily here. And not that I didn't in the town that I grew up in, Panama, because again, there were a lot of Asians, but still people in Panama I'm walking down the street, I would be called, hey, Chinese, right? Like, but that's not, yes, I am Chinese, but that's not just who I am. Like you're called by your race. Over here, it's not blatant. Like it's not, I'm walking and I feel comfortable. I don't feel unsafe walking here because everyone looks just like me.
But even in Japan, you were an outsider.
Yes, but surprisingly, I didn't have as much of a culture shock as some of my other fellow teachers who did not look Japanese, right? Because I blend in, I'm Asian looking. Even when I was in Japan, because I taught at a training facility for teachers, all the people that I used to work, my coworkers would say, you have a Japanese heart. You look Japanese, you act very Japanese, like you're very Asian, there are certain things and traits that help me blend in many ways. But there's also the flip side of it, because there's also the expectation that because I didn't speak Japanese, I didn't speak fluent Japanese, since when I go to the convenience store and I'm like trying to figure out how to buy something, I can't communicate Japanese, and they look at me all weird, like does not compute. Like you look Japanese, but you can't speak Japanese. So there's also the flip side of it.
Well, do you feel like an outsider here? That's one question. Mm-hmm. And second, do you ever feel you would need to actually live in Hong Kong or China to not be an outsider?
That's a very good question. I don't feel like an outsider just because of how I look like here in San Gabriel Valley, right? Because the majority, predominantly most people here are Asian or look Asian. But I still feel like I don't always fit in, probably because of how I grew up or where I grew up. Like Asian, I'm Panamanian, I'm Latin, I'm not Latin. And I think those were some of the biggest things that I had to contend with when I went to college. College was that time when I had to really explore identity and figure out, where do I really fit in? Am I really Latin? Am I really Asian? Am I Chinese? And I remember very distinctively at USC, there was at the time when I went to college, there was the Hong Kong Student Association, there was the Chinese Student Association, there was the Chinese Student and Scholars Association, and there was the Chinese American Student Association. So you have 4 different clubs that address different ethnic backgrounds within the Asian community. And even then, and I remember asking the questions like, do I fit in with the Hong Kong Student Association? Because my background, my family is from Hong Kong. No, not really. Do I fit in with the Chinese American Student Association? I don't really. So it's really I fit in everywhere. I don't fit in everywhere, right? So I don't feel like an outsider because of how I look, but inside sometimes I do feel like an outsider because I don't really fit in the mold of your traditional Chinese American student or Chinese American person.
That's interesting that you add Latin to that
Yeah.
identity that you're seeking. Have you ever tried to integrate yourself into like a Latin group or culture? Yeah.
I did. And even then it's like, you're like, who are you? Right? Because I don't look Panamanian. I'm not your typical looking Panamanian. And even the Panamanians are, it's very diverse. Panama is very diverse. And so I fit in everywhere. I don't fit in everywhere. Right? And so I feel like it is and maybe in many ways that's the reason why I am in international education, because I understand the cultural nuances of all the different different student groups that I have to work with, right, of my students, and I understand and I can fit in and I can relate.
Have you caught people speaking poorly about you in Spanish?
Oh yeah, many times. Oh, many times. Yeah.
Is it fun to out
is.
them?
It is fun. I remember, I think I was on Disneyland when I was younger, and we were standing in line waiting for a ride, and people would be saying things about me in Spanish, and I just turn around and talk to them in Spanish. Say, hey, what are you talking about? It's like, I'm right here. So what are you saying? Yeah. So yeah, it's a shock.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I always wish I could have some sort of experience like that, but I don't speak
A superpower.
Yeah, but anyway, so your experience must really lead to what you are doing now and helping these students. You said that you get to speak to them when they're in their home country. Mm-hmm. How do you make that connection?
Well, I think at where I am working now, we have a platform where the college is very supportive of welcoming international students and giving the opportunity of exchange for even other students, right? So sometimes we do travel, and not all the time. Many other times, if we don't travel, when we travel, we actually visit high schools and we talk to students. And a lot of times, because I work at a community college is a very foreign model to outside of the United States. Not all countries understand or have a similar educational model. And so a lot of times when we speak at high schools, we really are ambassadors of U.S. education, because we have to explain, what is the difference between a community college and a four-year university? And what are the benefits of going to community college first versus going to university directly? And so we talk about access and equity a lot in the work that we do, because that's what community college is for access and equity of all students. So when we are in students' home countries, we go to secondary schools or high schools to talk about higher education. A lot of the work now that we also do, because COVID, pandemic, post-pandemic, it's really online. We do have students by way of families. We get a lot of referrals from St. Gabriel residents. I have a cousin, I have an aunt who has a nephew who wants to come here to study in the United States, and they come to us and they start talking to us, and that's how we connect with students.
Do you see many of the school and career fairs overseas now? We used to go as a law firm. Sometimes we would go to
We do.
participate in those.
Yeah.
So you're doing that now?
We do some of that. A lot of the work that we do is usually at the high schools. Like we go and visit the high schools. We have dedicated time sometimes with the students. And again, because community colleges is something new to many families outside of the United States. So a lot of times, like at the fair, right, at a college fair, it's a little bit difficult to explain. Like they will always know who UCLA is, who USC is. They don't necessarily know who Pasadena City College is, right?
Yeah.
So we do things that's slightly a little bit different. And again, a lot of the work that I do is really to share with families like what is possible, right? Like you don't have to come to Pasadena City College, but if you're thinking about U.S. education, these are the pathways to it, what your student can accomplish and what can you afford, and how can we help you get there?
Yeah, it's a big investment, both mentally, and financially for these families.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And it's scary too. So you come to think of, you're sending your child abroad to go study by themselves at 18.
And to a country where they see shootings.
Yes.
It scares a lot of them.
Yeah, and it's a big investment for many of the families. So the work that I do, again, I guess I see the whole student. I see them from beginning all the way until the end, is really building a relationship with the students and sometimes with families to really explain and guide them, because a lot of it is new, a lot of it's foreign, and then you have to get good grades, right? For many of our students are studying, the weight of their families are on them, and so we're really there to be their biggest champions, to really help them.
So you help them understand the educational system here in the U.S., and when they come here, you're still supporting them as they're here and going through PCC.
Yeah. So for me, because I oversee the International Student Center, the International Student Department, my team they're rock stars. They really are, because we really support the student once they apply, once they get enrolled. Like, we really help the students, guide them through the visa application process, and once they secure the visa, getting them to come here, we onboard them. There's a lot of prep work. Like, next week is orientation for our new students. We try to explain to students, and sometimes families come, of what support services there are for them. And once they start classes, is really staying engaged with the student. We do a lot of tracking of the students, even though they don't know. Behind the scenes, we check on, like, how are you doing academically? Are you doing well in the class? Because sometimes for many of our students, doing academically bad, or let's say you miss a class, you get a D, it's usually the first signs of other larger things. It's not necessarily because you're being lazy or you just didn't do well. So we check in on the students and say, hey, Russell, how are you doing? I noticed that you got a D in that writing class. Is there anything I can do? Anything that we can do to support you, to help you? Sometimes students do open up, sometimes students don't. But the idea is that we are constantly being a constant there, so that if they are ready to reach out whenever they need our hand, we're there. Right? They'll remember, oh, Olivia reached out to me by email the other day, or she called me, or she texted me. And so after we do some of those things, the students are ready to graduate, they're ready to transfer. We see them through as well. We graduate them, we do celebrations for them, because their success is really our success too, right? And so we again see them all the way from the beginning to the end.
How many different languages are spoken on your team?
Probably four, if you include my student workers too, because we have student workers in our team. Yeah, it's about 4.
So is it primarily China that you're working with?
Yeah, I would say the majority of PCC international students are Chinese, or from China or Taiwan or Hong Kong. We also have students, a very large group of students from Indonesia and Burma, Myanmar.
I see. Yeah. I was wondering, like, if you have this center, like this international center, and you're reaching out to all these different countries and bringing them here. But okay, so primarily China. I wonder if you experienced this, because I've certainly seen this, and I know Scott has seen this from China. Parents sending their children here, and I went to school with these kids. They are like, they have maybe a whole house to themselves, and they're driving, 6-figure vehicle, and they have maybe $5,000 weekly allowance. I'm just like, wow, I've never seen this before. And their only job is to go to school at that time. Have you seen this?
Yes, I used to work at 4-year universities, and so we've seen a gamut of income levels. I would say yes, but not all students are like that. I think that's usually more the exception to the rule. But yes, there's a term for those students. Those are known as parachute kids, because the parents like drop them here and they parachute. I think that there's academically there's a term for that. Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Have you heard that? You heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're parachute kids. But yes, but they're here on their own usually.
Yeah, and I would go visit, let's say, Arcadia High School, and I would drive up for a game, right, that I have to referee, and I'm in the student parking lot, and I'm like, wow, Mercedes, BMW, Lamborghini, Mercedes.
Yeah.
Like, it's just unreal. I know that's not the everybody, but I can't even imagine that,
Yeah.
That's a tough burden too for a young person, I would say.
I'm sure it is. And I think even for parents, like if you are a parent, you want to give the best for your kid, right? And I think they just think, and I think so many cultures, it's like your way of supporting your child is, I cannot be there physically for you, so I will provide with you everything that you need materially in order to be successful, because your job is to focus on education. I think especially salient for Asian students, right, and Asian families. But again, a lot of my students, it's really exception rather than the norm. And you will find that post-COVID, a lot of families are hurting financially, and they still send their kids abroad because they believe that's a ticket to a better life for their kids, just like my parents did, right?
Yeah, America is pretty unique in that I lived overseas in several countries, and I've seen how families will sacrifice to great extents just to get their kids to America. Now, it's changing. It's not the way it was 20 years ago, but it's still pretty unique what you see in the U.S., where, it's a destination. It has been a destination. And I don't think Americans realize how unique America is in that sense, that these families overseas are sacrificing to get their children or family members to come here. Absolutely.
I think one of our biggest exports as the United States is education, right? Like nowhere else would you think I aspire to send my child to the U.S. to study. That's like education is, you have these large institutions that are Ivy Leagues that people aspire. Our families like many international students, families sacrifice their time and money for that, right? But again, we're not the number one, right, receiving country for international students. We have a lot of competition from Canada, from Australia, even places like Singapore. And so U.S. is no longer holding dominance in that area. But still, it is something quite unique as an export.
Yeah. Well, and it's a shame that America doesn't realize that we're training these people, these students, giving them great educations, and then we kick them out. It's like a national disgrace to me that we do that we bring them in. We use our resources to help train and teach them, but then we don't allow them to stay. And it's countries like Canada are taking advantage of our stupidity.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to say it, because I'm pretty passionate on this. We're a stupid country in that way. We have stupid leaders, and we're not a real political podcast, and I probably shouldn't get too political, but this is like a national disgrace to me. And how do you see it from your point of view?
I see very similar patterns that other countries have gotten ahead of the game than the United States.
Yeah.
Like you said, many students choose Canada as a study destination because it's a conduit to a pathways to citizenship, right?
Yeah.
And like these are bright, very young and bright students, and I think also a lot of people don't know the international students are not just coming here and getting support from the U.S. government. Like they come here to contribute to the U.S. economy. They're renting apartments here. They are contributing to society, doing research, right? And so many of our four-year universities, even our community colleges, they're contributing to the local economy. And so it's a win-win. And I think we have lagged in many ways in supporting immigration, like creating immigration law that is friendly to immigrants, so that they can eventually contribute to the U.S. economy.
Yeah. Again, I noticed as I traveled around the country that we're benefiting from the research of these international students and international researchers. But then a country like Canada comes in and poaches them because we're not doing anything to preserve their status here. And
Olivia, you mentioned that you helped the students with the visa process.
Yeah.
So do you work with a law firm or a firm that helps to do that, or are you guys doing that at PCC?
We actually don't. We are certified to enroll international students. So usually staff has to go through training through the Department of Homeland Security in order to understand what the rules are. And when we assist students in the visa process, is really giving them guidance, like, hey, these are the steps. It isn't as in-depth as a law firm would probably do, like an immigration lawyer would do, but we do provide them the guidance. And usually, because we see very similar patterns when the students go to their visa appointments, what type of questions they may be asked, we provide just general guidance to the students. We do have very high visa approval rates for the students usually who come. We do get occasionally every semester at least like a handful who get denied their visas and they try again. Very rarely do students get denied a second time, but usually when they get denied a second or third time, because it's a lot of money and time, usually there's a flag. There's usually something about the student that is said during the visa application process, during that interview process with the consulate officer that is raising a red flag. And most of those students usually don't proceed or don't try again.
I see. Well, Olivia, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
I brought a photograph, actually. This is a very old photograph, and I don't know if I can pass it around so you can see. It's a photograph on my mom's side of the family. And this is a very old photograph. I think my mom was probably in her teens, probably before 18. And the reason why I brought it is because it really is, I'm very proud of my heritage, and I'm very proud of what my mom came from nothing to something. Like, she really grew up in poverty in Macau. She was raised by a single mom because I lost my grandfather at that time. When she was very young, she lost her dad. So my grandmother, not remarried, but found another man, and basically raised a family of 4 by themselves. And so,
which was your mother?
My mom is the one far right. Yeah, that's my mom. And so you can see my uncles in the background. So she has 3 older brothers, and she was the youngest, and the only girl. And my grandmother was a seamstress. And my mom basically took on that role too when she was ready to work. And she started working at a very young age. And now it's like illegal because it's like child labor back in those days.
Is this Macau?
This is Macau, yeah.
About what year do you think?
Oh my gosh, my mom was born in the 1940s. She was probably under 18 at that time, maybe 16 or 15 at the time, I would say. So you could kind of, I can't do the math.
Maybe 1960.
Possibly, yeah. And so I remember all the stories of my mom and my step grandfather, you could say, of growing in poverty and growing through the revolution, the Cultural Revolution, and my mom kind of went past like Japanese invasion and all of that. So I don't forget where my parents came from, where my family came from. They came from nothing, and they gave a better life. So basically created better opportunities for me and my siblings to be here in the U.S.
Wow. Thank you for bringing that. Thank you for sharing that. Is your mom still with you?
Yeah, my mom is still with me, but she lives in Panama. Yeah.
Oh, she lives in Panama.
She lives in Panama with my dad, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're not here in the U.S. I'm the only one with, my siblings and I are the only ones here in the U.S.
How often do you go back to visit them?
Post-COVID, that was probably like maybe every 2 years, every 3 years. I just came back from visiting them. My dad just turned 80.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's a big milestone. But they come more often than us. They come more often to visit us than we go back because I have very young children, so it's harder to travel with young children. And they are still mobile and still in okay health, so they still are able to come to the U.S. to visit.
I see. Olivia, how much of your own personal experience as an international student do you get to share with your potential students or the ones that you're sort of guiding through this process?
Almost every day.
Every day?
Almost every day. I have a team. I don't work as closely with students now, but a lot of the work And a lot of the planning that we do is really keeping in mind my experiences and my background as an international student here in the US. It's like, oh, I know how it feels when you land in the US and you're in a foreign country and everything smells differently. Everything looks differently. Even navigating, getting out of the airport, we think through all the steps and we try to guide students every step of the way to, hey, you know, getting out of immigration, like what do you do? Like how do you get a cell phone? How do you open a bank account? So we navigate those in our spaces together with our students. So everything that we think of in our program is really keeping in mind what I and also my staff, a lot of my staff members were international students too, experienced in their past.
Wow. And is PCC the only place that you've done this work at?
No, I used to work at UCLA, I worked at UC Riverside, and I worked at USC. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And did you say you were doing this for 15 years or 15 years at PCC?
No, collectively for 15 years, yeah.
Okay.
PCC has been approximately 5 years.
And what would you say is I don't know, one of the advantages for an international student working with you at PCC?
I would say they have a community of care at PCC. PCC is the first community college where I work at, and I don't think I've ever been, and I tell everyone this, I don't think I've ever been at an institution or at a college where change happens quickly and change in support of students, of being very student-centered, happens that quickly. And so when I say there's a community of care, not just international students, but all students, there is constantly every single student at PCC is guided from the beginning. From the start when they step foot on campus, they either are part of a program or part of our first year, our Pathways First Year Experience program. And the idea is that they're guided every step of the way to understand what college is, how to be a college student, and then support all the way until they're ready to transfer or they're ready to graduate. And so for my international students, because I work with them primarily, they are assigned from the very beginning when they start applying. They have a point person. There's usually a person that will guide them through the admissions process. And once they are admitted, there is an advisor that will help them understand what are your visa responsibilities and benefits. And they also have academic counselors that are dedicated to them to help them understand, hey, what classes you need to take. Oh, your goal is to transfer to UC Berkeley? Okay, you're thinking about mechanical engineering? Okay, these are the classes you should be taking in the next 2 years, really creating a plan for them. And then if students have additional questions, there's peer leaders. We have actually a peer leader program, students who are second or third year, students at PCC who can answer just questions that are not regularly academic questions, like, oh, who's the best professor to take, or where's the best spot to study on campus. So we have those, and we also have graduate assistants who are paraprofessionals, who are also kind of like a big sister, big brother to our international students. So again, I mentioned all these people because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. All these people are a community of care for our students, because no matter what step of the way they are, there's always someone there that they can ask for help. There's always someone there thinking about them and making sure that they're progressing and making progress to get to their educational goal.
Well, that seems like a lot of help, a lot of support for them.
And that's why I love working at PCC. I think it's because they really care about the students.
And I know PCC, I know the campus, I went there, and it's still like a commuter type of school, right? Like people go there, they go to class, and then they go home. Maybe they hang out for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Are the international students engaging in the college life as a normal, like let's say not normal, but someone from here would, or is their experience a little bit different?
We try very hard. When I first started working at PCC, there wasn't really, there was student programming, but for international students, there was not that much, right? Because international students, they tend to, when they first arrive, everything is new, you go through culture shock, they tend to group themselves with people who speak the same language or come from the same countries. And so a lot of the programming that my office does is usually to get the students to know each other better, but also to meet students that are outside of their circle of their group of friends. And so for many international students, we're seeing more and more that, I think post-COVID too, that need to connect. And so a lot of the times is something as simple as this, there's a boba meetup on campus. We'll provide the boba, we'll provide the space, you just come. And so students so organically will start getting to know each other, especially the first timers, the first year students. When they arrive, they're like freshly excited that this is a new environment. So they tend to form those groups very early on, and that is the key for students to persist. And we see that, and there's research to it, that students usually, when they find community with each other, there's a network of support. They don't feel as alone. So that crucial moment when we create spaces for them to connect at the very beginning is very important. So we do see international students getting more and more involved on campus.
I see. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like that community and that friend group would be important for them. Olivia, I want to go into more of how you support them through that process, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
At Warmouth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Olivia. Olivia, before the break, we were talking about their international students' experience at PCC and you helping to create space for them to form these groups. And I want to go more into that. But before that, when we come back from the break, we'd like to ask a question from this box. It's a icebreaker box. And they're extremely terrifying questions, very penetrating and very deep. So I hope you are ready. No, just kidding, because your face was like sort of bracing for the worst. So no, they're lighthearted. You can answer it or not. No pressure. So here we go. What's your best scar story?
Oh, that's a good one. What's my best scar stories? I'll show you my scar right here.
Okay.
It's on my arm. And when I was growing up, I was probably 16 years old in Panama. I had a dog, and he was a mutt, but he was I don't even know, it was like a German Shepherd mutt. But he was something about my dog. He was super territorial of the garden area. And so my mom was and he would allow only one person at a time in his garden. And so my mom was working on her garden, and my dog was just roaming around, and I was playing in the garden, and she was like, "Oh, can you pass me this?" It was like a gardening tool. I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." I passed it to him, and my dog just basically chomped on me because he felt so territorial about it. And I made the mistake of, your knee-jerk reaction is to pull, and I pulled. And I remember that pulled skin. Sorry to the listeners, but yeah, I pulled skin. I had to get stitches. But I like that moment in time, everyone's like on high alert. It's like never more than one person in the garden, and my dog was around because he was so territorial.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, that was not something you were expecting.
No, that's fine. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So.
Did your parents get rid of the dog?
No, we didn't.
Really?
No,
But it never bothered you again like that?
I mean, of course I would be afraid, but he was such a good dog, but I think it's just his background as he was an abandoned dog, and we just took him in. He was a mutt, and he was not abandoned. This one we took him when he was very young, but it was just in his personality. It's just very territorial.
That sounds
terrifying.
Oh, terrifying!
Right?
Yeah. Oh, I have one. Are you ready with one, Scott? Or are you still thinking?
No, actually, it's funny. I do have scars too, and I've got one on my face, which is probably not very noticeable anymore. But 30 years ago, I had just a biopsy, maybe. I think that's what it was called. So it's right on my face, and when I was right after the biopsy, there were stitches, and so a few people, friends, called me Zipper Face.
Good friends. Good friends then.
Right. Friends with the quotation marks, But yeah, my big scar is on the back of my neck, but most people can't see that because it's hidden. But that's the one that I like more because it's a big scar, and it was my neck surgery, I think you called me the bionic.
Yeah,
I have a bionic
plate in
neck.
there, right?
I
Yeah.
have 3 plates. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I can do anything I want, but Yeah, that's my big scar, but nobody knows about that one. So
Do you beep when you go through
no,
the X-ray
no,
machine?
I don't. Absolutely no after effects, but it was three. They must not be very. I don't know if they're plates or screws or whatever. It's to keep the discs separated in my neck. But I can do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not limited in what I can do physically. But it was I came out of the first surgery. It was 3 surgeries, and the first one, they had code red. I mean, imagine you come out of a surgery, and they never did the surgery because the doctor could tell if he did, it would paralyze me. So, it's like you're just coming awake after being anesthetized, and it's like code red. We have code red here. And it's like the first thing you do is start, like, do I still have my fingers? Can I move? It's kind of scary, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my scar stories.
I have many. I'm not sure which one to share. I have this jet ski one. I have this one on my corner of my eye, and then I have this large scar on my leg. Well, if you're a listener to the show, I was involved with a very dangerous person, and she chose to throw an unfinished mirror at me, and it sliced open my leg, and I needed 8 internal stitches and 13 external stitches.
Wow.
And I was bleeding profusely. Yeah, I can actually see the tendons moving as I was bending my knee.
Ooh.
Yeah, it actually didn't hurt. It really didn't hurt. There was no real pain. Even to see it, it was just shocking, but there was no pain, and they had to, clean it out. I was just glad they didn't sever any tendon, and there's no permanent damage other than there's this very large reminder. So yeah, that's a scar story for you.
It's amazing. Science is amazing. If you think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, they can stitch me up after all that.
Yeah. I mean, it just must have just torn the skin, rather than really penetrating. And it was a very clean cut too. So yeah.
That's funny. We all 3 had scar stories, though. I wonder how many people actually have scar stories.
Well, I bet a lot.
We were 3 out of 3.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a listener to the show, what is your best scar story? Let us know in the comment section below, and we'll try and read one on a future episode. Olivia, back to you and your work with the international students. You said you're a champion for them. So do you feel some sort of joy or fulfillment when you see them, having come through you in the beginning and then accomplishing their educational goals?
Yeah, 100%. It's like you see them from the very beginning and all the way until the end. And so for some of my students, it's funny. One that just graduated that comes to mind, I remember we admitted him during COVID. And during COVID, our students couldn't come, so a lot of it was done remotely. So I remember seeing his application, reviewing his application, communicating with him by email, and then when classes had started, he did his first year remotely, completely online. And if you think about it, he was from Indonesia, so if you think about it, the time difference, so the student actually was waking up in the middle of their night to go take a class that was synchronous. Some of his classes were asynchronous, so synchronous class. And then when he finally arrives, like I could put a face to the application, to the student's name, and he just graduated, and I think he transferred to UCLA, I believe, yeah. Straight A student, got so many accolades, but to see that, it's like I know it's all their work. He put in the work. But I cannot feel living vicariously through you and through him and seeing in his eyes all the things that he's accomplished and all the amazing things he will be accomplishing at his other school, and kind of being a little bit proud about it. And he would hang out in our office a lot, because they don't, in between classes, they don't have anything else going on. They just sit there at the lobby, and we'd be like, oh, you're here again.
Well, how many students do you have under your program?
Back when I had first started 5 years ago, there were close to about 900. Now we kind of are about 400, 500 right now, because COVID decimated a lot of our numbers.
Right.
And, students have options. We're not the only community college in the area,
right.
So there's a lot of students go to other places.
And you had also said that the U.S. is not any longer the leading destination?
We are.
The U.S. is still for foreign students?
For foreign students.
Worldwide?
Yeah. Worldwide, I believe it still is. But I think we have a lot of competition from other countries too. Cheaper competitions.
Yeah.
You mentioned this one student that you saw through this process and through COVID. Do they come back to you after? And
we do see them come back. Yeah. They come visit. We just had yesterday one of our ones that just graduated. He went back home to visit his family, and he just came back and he dropped off coffee and candy. And we were in a meeting, and he was so respectful. He's like, "Oh, I know you. He's in a meeting. Well, I'll just drop it off." And so our front desk student worker walks in. Hey, he came by and he dropped us all these gifts. Like, oh, we're so sad we missed him. But they do come by, and it's so nice to see when they tell us stories of what they are doing now. Like I had one student came by a few years ago just to visit and say hi. He had graduated from PCC. He couldn't, I think he didn't have enough money to continue his study, so he returned home. But when he went home, he applied for a master's program here in the U.S. And so he took a break, worked for a little bit at home, and came back to the U.S. And after he was done with his master's program, I think he ended up getting sponsored to work. I think he was working for Amazon. At the time, he was doing what we call post-completion employment training. So he was doing that, and I think his goal eventually was to get sponsored to stay in the U.S. But he did, he took a break and he came back, and so we see them. They do come back and share their stories, and we love it.
Yeah, that must be really nice. I just realized now there's a few areas of work where you impact generations of families by the work that you do. And you're one of those, I think, that you can help to transform entire generations of a family just in this one person, Yeah, that's must be extremely fulfilling to see and know.
Yeah, there are great things about it. I think sometimes we do encounter hiccups and obstacles. Most of the obstacles that we encounter sometimes with students is, because we see the student more than parents sometimes do. Students go through a lot of mental health, academic difficulties, navigating all these spaces. And when they struggle, we struggle too. Like we feel it too. So there are great successes. We see the great benefits of it. We see amazing things that our students do, but we also see the not so pretty sides of them, when they get sick, when they are not feeling well, when they don't get support, when they struggle. And so we absorb some of that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Spoken like a true, humble person to receive a compliment and sort of to balance it out with the reality of of what it's like.
Well, thank you. I'll take it.
Olivia, we're going to move on to our final segment of our show where we find out a little bit more about you.
Olivia, we'd like to know some of your favorite places or things to do in the San Gabriel Valley. We call this our SGV3. What are some places you like to go to, or, places that have a lot of memories for you here in the San Gabriel Valley?
So I think right now there's a boba craze going on. It's been going on for years, but at PCC there's a place, and we frequent that place often. It's called Bubble Puff and Tea, and they have really great boba, and actually their owner used to be an international student, so we're very good friends with her, so she knows. So Bubble Puff is a great place, and the one drink that I really like a lot is their uji matcha and mango. It's really, really good. If you ever get a chance, go visit Bubble Puff.
Is it on Colorado?
It's on Colorado, right across from PCC.
Okay.
Yes, Bubble Puff and Tea.
Bubble Puff and Tea.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Bubble Puff and Tea.
I think I drive by it quite often. Is it a single standalone building?
Is it a single standalone building? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because we saw the owner, she had started off the side. Her store was not on Colorado, it was on the side street by Colorado. And then eventually she slowly, little by little, she worked really hard and she rented the space, her current location where it's actually on Colorado. So if you ever get a chance, you visited Caltech yesterday, so if you ever get a chance to go back, go to Bubble Puff and Tea.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Another place, food-wise, and I'm sorry I'm like dropping these names because I really believe in them. It's actually also across from PCC. I'm sorry, I'm like quoting all these places right across from where I work. It's QQ Kopitiam. It's a mom and pop shop. They are a Singaporean / Southeast Asian tiny restaurant, but the owners have been there for many, many years, and they make Singaporean food. And so if you ever have a chance to go try their char kway teow, I may have not like butchered it, but it's basically a noodle dish, and the owner really does a great job of really creating really great dishes. Again, very mom and pop, very small store. And their laksa is also very good if you get a chance to go try it.
Singaporean food. What was the name again?
It's QQ, as in like the letter Q, and then Kopitiam. I guess it's like a coffee shop in Malaysian, maybe. But it's Singaporean / Malaysian food.
I see. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I know I've seen QQ there.
Yeah. There's not that many Singaporean / Malaysian places here in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah.
I know there's one that they open up on Valley, I believe. Yeah, I can't remember what's the name of that place. It eludes me. But yeah, not that many places like that.
Yeah, it sounds good though.
Yeah, it is really good if you can get
some noodles, huh?
Noodles, yes.
Yeah,
noodles. And their
right.
laksa, yes, if you like spice. Yeah, it's really good.
How about a third place?
Third place, I would say Lacey Park. If at Lacey Park, usually over the weekends you have to pay to get in if you're not a San Marino resident.
Right.
But I have young kids, so Lacey Park is like huge and very open, and they have this little loop around. It's a great place to go and take a stroll, especially during the summer when it's so hot. Or you just even ride your bikes and your scooters. During the weekdays, I think it's free to go in, but during the weekends you have to pay if you're not San Marino resident. Yeah, a great place if you're like looking to cool down.
Yeah,
it's enclosed, right, with like a sort of maybe trees or something, and then there's a little rose garden area.
Yeah, there
small
is.
Playground.
Yes.
But a track that goes around. I believe there's two entrances. I mean, there's the main entrance on, I can't remember the name of that street. St. Albans or
Virginia.
Or Virginia. Yeah. But I believe there's a back entrance. There's tennis courts in the back.
I don't think I've ever gone through the back entrance, but yes, you're right. Yes.
Because I seem to remember that the high school cross-country runners come through there, through the back. But anyway,
But great place if you ever like want to walk and it's so hot.
Yeah, it's a cute park.
Cute park, yes, very cute park.
And very distinct from other public parks in the San Gabriel Valley, I would say, right? Like,
yeah, it is very distinct.
Well, it's kind of private.
Yes.
There's sort of a private feel about it because of the fact that they charge to get in if you're not a resident.
And it's really like manicured and landscaped very well, right? And you can tell it's very old.
Yeah. I think the great thing about it is just it's surrounded by trees, so you kind of have that shade. It's a little bit cooler. And
but they have the open field
in the middle, yeah.
We would go watch July 4th fireworks there. I don't know if they do that anymore.
I don't know, yeah.
When we were raising our kids.
Yeah. It's a great place. I like it.
Well, thank you for those, Olivia. I think Lacey Park has been named before, but definitely not the first two. Yeah. So thank you for introducing us and our listeners to those. Olivia, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us what it is that you do and your passion. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way to do that?
They can visit the Pasadena City College website. Our international website is just pasadena.edu/international. And we welcome all students. If they want to get in touch with me, my contact information is there too.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a listener and you are a current or former international student and maybe even came across Olivia, drop us a line in the comments. Let us know. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely go check out the PCC website. Well, there you have it. Another episode in the books. Thank you for spending this time with us. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to us so you don't miss out on our future content. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on the My SGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Russell Mono and edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice matter. No, kind matter.